Your kiss still burns on my lips. My wife, writing about another man's kiss. Alex, when your hand brushed mine across the table tonight, I swear I felt 17 again. Mark sits across from me every evening, but it's your eyes I see when I close mine. You make me feel alive in ways he hasn't in years. Your kiss still burns on my lips, though it was only a moment. If this is wrong, then I don't want to be right. I froze. The words glowed against the screen like a fire I never lit, but one that was already consuming me. It wasn't a love letter hidden in a drawer, yellowed with age. It was right here, on Rachel's laptop, unsent, unfinished, but more real than anything I had felt in years. Her words painted a world where she was young again, reckless again, in the arms of someone who wasn't me. And the cruelest part? She hadn't even bothered to erase it. I read it again, slower this time, my stomach twisting as each phrase cut deeper. Your kiss still burns on my lips. My wife. Writing about another man's kiss. Welcome to my story. My name is Mark. If you've ever wondered how a marriage shatters quietly, without screams, without slammed doors, just broken pieces scattered in silence, then stay with me. And before we go further, take a moment to like this story, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. You'll want to hear what came after because this letter was only the beginning. I sat in the dark living room, the glow of the screen casting blue shadows across my face. Upstairs, Rachel was asleep, her breathing steady, innocent, untouched by the words she had left here for me to find. But only I knew the truth now. A part of her was gone, and it wasn't coming back. In the draft, there was no email address, just a name. Alex. The sound of it sliced through me like a dull knife. Who was Alex? A coworker? A stranger? Or someone worse? Memories crowded in. Rachel had been dressing differently, wearing perfume I didn't recognize, smiling at her phone when she thought I wasn't watching. She came home late, claiming deadlines and endless meetings. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was being paranoid. But these words ended all excuses. I clicked again. Another draft appeared, longer, heavier. Do you remember the way you touched my wrist in the car, Alex? It was like lightning under my skin. Mark holds my hand out of habit, but you hold it like it means something. When you leaned in at the stoplight, when your lips grazed mine, I forgot I was someone's wife. I only remembered I was yours. My throat tightened. I could barely breathe. There was no doubt anymore. This wasn't just fantasy typed out in stolen minutes. It had happened. They had touched. They had kissed. Rachel had given away what I thought was ours alone. I didn't storm upstairs. I didn't shake her awake. Instead, I sat in silence, letting the anger seep into me like poison, slow and cold. That night I read them all, every draft, every hidden confession. Rachel had poured her soul into these unsent messages, writing what she couldn't say aloud. She described his hands, his voice, the thrill of being seen again. She wrote about how alive he made her feel, how empty our marriage had become. Each letter was a knife, and I let every one of them pierce me, because I needed the pain. I needed to understand exactly what she had given away. When I finally closed the laptop, I knew everything had changed. The mornings with coffee, the quiet nights in front of the television, they were lies now. She had opened a door that couldn't be shut, and I would open one of my own. The morning after I discovered the emails, Rachel moved through the kitchen as if life hadn't shifted under our feet. She poured coffee, slid my mug across the counter, and smiled as though she hadn't confessed her heart to another man in hidden drafts. Her voice was soft, practiced, the way it had always been. But I couldn't hear her anymore without also hearing the words she had written. When her fingers brushed mine as she handed me the cup, A shiver ran up my arm. It wasn't warmth. It was betrayal, masquerading as touch. She had described Alex's hand in such vivid detail, how it made her feel alive, how it made her remember who she used to be. That same hand she wrote about wasn't mine, and I couldn't stop seeing the difference. I watched her closely that day, and the next, and every day after. I became a collector of details. Her perfume, her lipstick, the way her phone stayed face down on the table. I noticed the hesitation before she answered me when I asked about her schedule. I noticed the way she lingered in the bathroom before work, emerging with her hair styled, her blouse buttoned lower than usual, and when she smiled at her reflection. It wasn't for me. At dinner that week, Rachel sat across from me while stirring her pasta absent-mindedly. She laughed at something on her phone, her eyes glowing in a way I hadn't seen in years. When I asked what was so funny, she shrugged, saying it was just a meme from a coworker. She never looked up when she said it. I set my fork down and studied her. This woman, who once couldn't stop talking to me during dinner, now treated silence as her companion. Her gaze drifted toward the window, toward a world that had nothing to do with me. I wanted to ask her outright, to slam my fist down and demand the truth. But my anger had turned into something colder, quieter. I would not let her know what I had seen. Not yet. At night, lying in bed, the space between us felt wider than the Grand Canyon. I reached for her once, my palm resting against the curve of her hip. She murmured, "I'm tired," rolling onto her side, pulling the blanket higher. Her body was near, but her heart was gone. Yet in her drafts, she wrote about sleepless nights with Alex, about how she lay awake, remembering his kiss, about the way her body ached when they were apart. Reading those words, then feeling her turn away from me in our bed. It was a kind of cruelty she didn't even realize she was inflicting. I started paying attention to patterns. Wednesday nights, always late meetings. Friday lunches, she dressed better than usual, a blouse tucked neatly into her skirt, heels clicking as she walked out the door. She said it was because clients came by the office. But I remembered a line from one of her emails. "That blue dress drives you crazy. You told me so when you held me in the stairwell." She wore that very dress on a Friday, her smile secretive as she kissed my cheek goodbye. And I let her go, my chest hollowing with the weight of knowing. One evening, I decided not to sit at home wondering. I parked my car 2 blocks from her office, waiting in the shadows like a man I no longer recognized. The building's lights flickered as employees filed out. Rachel appeared later, her phone pressed to her ear, her lips curved in a smile I hadn't earned in years. She walked toward a corner, glancing over her shoulder once as if making sure no one saw. My heart thundered as a man stepped out from the opposite street. They didn't touch, not openly. But the way she tilted her head toward him, the way his hand hovered near the small of her back, it told me everything. I didn't follow closer. I didn't need to. I had read her words. Now I had seen them come alive. That night, she came home at nearly midnight. She smelled faintly of smoke and wine, scents that had no place in the sterile office where she claimed to be. She slipped out of her heels, set down her purse, and smiled weakly at me as if to say, "Sorry, long night." I smiled back, but it wasn't kindness. It was a mask. To those of you listening, maybe you know this kind of silence. The one where you pretend you don't see what's in front of you because the truth is too heavy to carry. If you do, then stay with me. And remember to like this story, subscribe, and leave a comment. Because the silence doesn't last forever. The truth always comes to the surface. The more I observed Rachel, the more I realized I didn't recognize her anymore. She hummed while cooking, a tune I hadn't heard in years. She lingered in front of the mirror, turning slightly as though imagining another pair of eyes on her. She kept her phone close, even taking it into the bathroom as if it were a lifeline. And still, she came home to me. She sat at the same table, in the same house, shared the same bed, but she wasn't mine anymore. She belonged to someone else, and she had chosen to write it down, even if she never sent it. I carried that knowledge like a stone in my chest, heavy, unrelenting. And I knew sooner or later the stone would crush me if I didn't act. The name kept circling my mind like a crow. Alex. It wasn't just a stranger's name anymore. It was too familiar, too sharp, too rooted in something I couldn't yet name. I tried to push it away, to convince myself there were 1,000 men named Alex in this city. But the truth has a way of gnawing at you until it's exposed. One evening, Rachel left her laptop open on the counter while she stepped out to take a call. My pulse quickened as I slid into her chair. The screen glowed with another draft email, half-written, raw, aching with the intimacy I had come to dread. Alex, the way you looked at me across the restaurant last night made me forget where I was. For a moment, it was just us again, like when we first met in college. I've never felt that spark with anyone else, not even him. My throat closed. College. The word hit me like a slap. I leaned back, staring at those lines until they blurred. There had been an Alex in her life back then, a tall, dark-haired boy with a smile that made girls blush. He was the kind of guy who walked into a room and instantly became the center of it. And yes, I remembered the way Rachel used to laugh at his jokes. But she had chosen me. I had been the one she said yes to, the one she married. I had let myself believe she had forgotten him, that he was just a page in the yearbook of our past. Now, staring at the screen, I realized that page had never been closed. When Rachel returned, she slid her phone into her pocket quickly, her face flushed. She kissed my cheek, her lips cool, and asked if I wanted tea. I nodded, but inside, I was burning. That night I lay awake while her breathing settled into slow, steady waves beside me. I closed my eyes and saw Alex's face, younger, laughing in the glow of campus lights. I remembered standing at a party years ago, watching Rachel talk to him, her eyes shining in a way that had once terrified me. I had felt like an intruder then, worried she might slip away. But she didn't. She stayed. She chose me. Or maybe I had only borrowed her. The next day, I began to dig. I searched old photos, flipping through albums we hadn't touched in years. There he was, Alex, arms slung around a group of friends, Rachel leaning close in the frame. They looked comfortable together, like two people who understood each other in a way words couldn't capture. My stomach knotted. And then the memories came rushing back. The night I found Rachel crying in her dorm, the night she said Alex had broken her heart, how I had held her and promised she deserved better. I was the rebound, the safe choice. I had built a life on that foundation, never knowing it was cracked. Days blurred into weeks as I gathered more pieces. I checked Rachel's phone when she left it unattended, found his number saved under a false name. I scrolled through her planner and saw initials scribbled in margins. She thought she was clever, but secrets have a way of bleeding through. The final confirmation came one Friday evening. Rachel told me she had a late meeting again. I nodded, kissed her cheek, and let her leave. 10 minutes later, I was in my car, following the familiar route. She parked near a quiet Italian restaurant. My heart raced as I saw him step out of a black sedan. Even after 20 years, I recognized him. Alex. His hair streaked with gray now, his shoulders broader, but the same smile, easy, confident, dangerous. And when Rachel saw him, she lit up like a girl again. They didn't kiss in the open, not yet, but they didn't need to. The way her hand brushed his arm, the way she tilted her face toward him, the way his eyes lingered on her lips. It was all there. Confirmation. Proof. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles whitened. My wife, with him. The man she had once loved before me. The man she had written to in secret while lying beside me. Driving home that night, I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left only echoes. But beneath the hollowness, something else stirred. Not rage, not yet. Something colder. A plan forming in the shadows of my mind. Because here's the truth. Betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from two directions. And Rachel and Alex thought they had me fooled. Thought I would sit quietly in the dark while they reignited their flame. But I wasn't the same man I had been in college, watching from the sidelines, afraid to lose her. No. This time, I wasn't afraid. This time I was going to make sure that when the truth came out, neither of them would walk away unscathed. The name Alex had been echoing in my head for weeks, but I hadn't let myself connect the dots. There are thousands of men with that name. It could have been anyone. That was the lie I told myself over and over because the truth felt too dangerous. But then one evening Rachel left her laptop open, the cursor blinking in a half-finished draft. My heart pounded as I leaned over the keyboard. Her words stared back at me. Alex, the way you looked at me across the restaurant last night made me forget everything else. For a moment, it felt like college again. You make me feel 20 years younger, alive in a way I never feel at home. Sometimes I wonder if I ever really stopped loving you. I froze. College. My chest tightened as if an invisible hand was squeezing the air out of me. There had been an Alex back then. A name I had buried under decades of marriage, mortgage payments, and shared routines. A shadow I thought we'd left behind. I closed the laptop slowly, afraid the sound would betray my shaking hands. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw him. Alex at 20, tall and magnetic, with the kind of grin that made professors overlook late assignments. He was the kind of man other men envied without admitting it, the kind of man who never had to try. And Rachel, my Rachel, had once looked at him the way she was supposed to look at me. I remembered a party sophomore year, music pounding through the dorm walls, beer bottles sweating on the counter. I stood near the doorway, watching Rachel and Alex laugh together, their heads bent close. She leaned in to whisper something and he threw his head back, his hand brushing her knee casually, as if it belonged there. I had felt invisible. I had felt like I was watching the inevitable, her falling for someone I could never compete with. But weeks later, she was crying in her dorm room, mascara smudged, whispering that Alex had broken her heart. I held her then. I told her she deserved better. And somehow, better became me. But lying in bed decades later, with her body turned away from mine, I wondered if she had ever stopped wanting him. The next morning, I dug out our old college album. Dust clung to the cover as if trying to keep the past sealed. I flipped through the pages, each snapshot another knife. Rachel and Alex laughing in a group photo, his arm resting on the back of her chair, his gaze angled toward her when he thought no one noticed. And then, there we were. Rachel and me, smiling stiffly for the camera, as if I had borrowed her affection for the sake of the picture. I slammed the album shut, bile rising in my throat. The days after that felt unreal. Rachel moved around the house like everything was normal. She hummed as she folded laundry, she asked about my meetings, she touched my shoulder in passing, but all I could hear were her words. Sometimes I wonder if I ever really stopped loving you. I began searching for proof, as if the drafts weren't enough. When her phone buzzed, she snatched it up too quickly. When she wrote in her planner, I caught glimpses of letters. A scribble I knew was more than coincidence. And then came the Friday night that broke me. She told me she had a late meeting. Her voice was casual, too casual, her eyes sliding away from mine. I nodded, kissed her cheek, and let her walk out the door. 10 minutes later, I followed. Her car stopped outside a small Italian restaurant tucked on a quiet street. I parked far enough to stay hidden, my breath shallow, my fingers locked around the steering wheel. And then he appeared. Even in the dim light, I knew. Alex. Older now, hair touched with gray, lines carving his face. But the confidence was still there, the easy charm that had once pulled her in. My stomach dropped as I watched Rachel's face light up. She looked like a girl again, like the Rachel I hadn't seen in years. They didn't kiss. They didn't have to. The way she leaned toward him, the way his hand hovered just shy of her back, guiding her toward the door. It was intimacy dressed as discretion. I sat there, every muscle locked as they disappeared inside. The restaurant lights flickered, laughter spilled out, and I realized I was breathing like a man who had been stabbed but refused to cry out. I drove home on autopilot. My hands gripped the wheel, but my mind replayed every scene: the party in college, Rachel's tears, her choice to marry me, and now this. It was as if time had folded in on itself, dragging me back to a place I thought I had escaped. When Rachel came home near midnight, she smelled faintly of wine and smoke. And she slipped off her heels, set down her purse, and offered me a weary smile. "Long night," she murmured. I smiled back. But inside, something had shifted. It wasn't anger, not the fiery kind that explodes and burns out. This was colder, sharper, a decision forming in silence. Because I finally understood the truth. I hadn't stolen Rachel from Alex all those years ago. I had been keeping her warm for him, holding a place she always meant to return to. But I wasn't 20 anymore. I wasn't the insecure boy standing at a college party, watching from the doorway. No. I was a man who had read every word she never meant me to see. And I was going to use them. Rachel and Alex thought they were rewriting their love story. They thought they could live in the shadows, hidden from consequence. But shadows have a way of revealing themselves in the right light, and I would be the one to turn it on. The night I saw them together at the restaurant, something inside me shifted permanently. Until then, I had been a man drowning in grief, trying to tread water in a storm of betrayal. But as I drove home under the heavy glow of streetlights, grief hardened into resolve. I was no longer the wounded husband. I was the architect of their downfall. It began quietly, almost invisibly. A password guessed here, an account accessed there. Rachel had grown careless, too blinded by the thrill of rekindled passion to notice the walls closing in around her. Her email, her texts, her calendar. Soon they all belonged to me. I read every message, every word she sent to Alex. Each one was another cut, another reminder of how little of her heart had ever been mine. Yet each message also gave me ammunition. They spoke of places, plans, fantasies. They thought they were cautious, writing in half-truths and abbreviations. But I was fluent now in their code. One night, she sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone, smiling faintly at whatever he had written. I sat beside her, pretending to watch television, my heart pounding as I memorized the reflection of her screen in her glasses. She laughed softly at his words, and I felt a strange calm settle over me. Let her laugh. Every secret she thought she owned, I now possessed. But betrayal isn't punished with knowledge alone. It needed precision. It needed timing. I started with Alex. His life was easier to pry into than I expected. A business consultant, married with 2 children, living in a suburb not far from us. His wife, Claire, was the kind of woman Rachel used to envy. Elegant, grounded, respected in her community. I wondered if she knew, if she suspected. if she ever smelled Rachel's perfume on his shirt the way I imagined it. I didn't reach out to her. Not yet. A trap only works if the prey never sees the net lowering. Instead, I watched patterns unfold like clockwork. Rachel's late meetings always lined up with Alex's business dinners. The same restaurants, the same neighborhoods, the same excuses spoken into different homes. They weren't creative, and that was their greatest weakness. The more I observed, the more I realized they thought I was blind. They mistook my silence for ignorance. That would be their undoing. One evening, while Rachel showered, I stood in our bedroom and stared at the drawer where she kept her journals. She had always written, small, neat entries no one was meant to read. For years, I had respected that boundary. But boundaries had been burned away now. I opened the drawer and pulled one out. The leather cover was warm from her hands. I turned the pages and found more than I could stomach. Descriptions of stolen moments, the way Alex's hand brushed against hers, the way his kiss made her tremble. Each word was a knife wrapped in poetry, but I read them all. And then I photographed them. Now I had more than messages. I had her own handwriting, her confessions immortalized in ink. I thought about confrontation, about slamming the pages down in front of her, demanding answers, demanding honesty. But then I pictured her eyes filling with tears, her voice breaking, her lies twisting into pleas. No, confrontation would give her power. I didn't want a confession. I wanted consequence. So I began weaving the net tighter. A copied key slipped into my pocket so I could enter Alex's office one night and plant a flash drive. Emails, calendars, even invoices, downloaded in silence. I wanted to know him the way I now knew her. I wanted every angle, every weakness. The pieces began to form a picture. A man with debts hidden from his wife. A woman with secrets written in journals. A love affair stitched together with lies. And then, one night as Rachel slept beside me, I whispered a promise into the dark. I won't scream. I won't beg. But when this ends, you'll both be standing in ruins. Days turned into weeks, and the tension became my mask. At breakfast, I stirred sugar into my coffee while Rachel read her phone. She thought I wasn't paying attention. She thought she was free. She would look up and smile at me, the same gentle smile she'd worn for 20 years, and I would smile back. But beneath the table, my fists were clenched. Sometimes she touched my arm lightly, absent-minded, and I felt revulsion mixed with longing. My wife's hand, so familiar, so warm, yet stained with someone else's fingerprints. I became two men, the husband she thought she knew, and the hunter circling quietly, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And though the rage in me was fierce, it wasn't rage that guided me, it was clarity, cold, calculated clarity. The plan was no longer about discovery. I had discovered enough. The plan was about exposure. Because love affairs burn brightly in the shadows, but in the light, they shrivel. And I was ready to open every curtain. The night I chose to end it all was strangely quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against your eardrums, making you hear every heartbeat, every shallow breath. Rachel believed she was leaving for another meeting, her perfume lingering like a taunt as she slipped into her coat. I kissed her cheek before she left, savoring the irony. She smiled at me with practiced ease, then disappeared into the dark. I waited 15 minutes before following. This time, it wasn't the restaurant. It was Alex's house. His driveway held her car like a secret, hidden behind his. I parked down the street, my pulse steady now, not frantic. Rage had given way to something colder, almost surgical. Through the window I saw them. Rachel, curled on his sofa, laughing softly, her hand on his knee. Alex leaned closer, whispering something that made her close her eyes and smile. And that smile, once mine, now felt like a weapon. I snapped the photos. Clean, undeniable, time-stamped proof. And then I walked back to my car. But proof wasn't enough. Proof was only the blade. It needed a stage. The next evening, I set the table for 4. Candles flickered, wine breathed in the decanter. Rachel came home to the scent of roasted chicken and raised her eyebrows. "Special occasion?" she asked, hanging her coat. "Something like that," I said. She didn't know Alex and Claire were on their way. When the doorbell rang, Rachel froze. Her eyes widened as she saw Claire first, elegant, calm, unsuspecting. And then Alex, stiff behind her, his face blanching as recognition dawned. "Mark?" Claire's voice trembled. "You wanted to talk?" "Yes," I said, stepping aside. "Dinner's ready." The silence was suffocating as we sat. Rachel's fork trembled against her plate. Alex cleared his throat, but no sound came. Claire looked between us, her gaze sharpening, suspicion turning into dread. I let the silence stretch until it nearly broke us all. Then, slowly, I placed the photographs on the table. One by one, like cards in a rigged game. Rachel and Alex at the restaurant. Rachel's car in his driveway. Their laughter caught mid-frame. Claire gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Alex reached for her, but she pulled back as if his touch burned. Rachel's face drained of color. "Mark," I held up my hand. "Don't. Every word you say will be a lie." Her lips parted, but no sound came. Claire's tears fell silently. Alex tried to speak, to spin some excuse, but the photos spoke louder than he ever could. Finally, I reached into my pocket and laid down the final piece, a copy of Rachel's journal entry, her own handwriting betraying her. Claire stared, broken. Then she stood, her chair scraping against the floor. "We're done, Alex." "You've destroyed everything." She left without another word. The sound of the door slamming was a funeral bell. Alex followed her, calling her name, his voice cracking, but I knew it was useless. Rachel sat frozen, staring at me with wide, tear-filled eyes. "Mark, please, we can fix this." I laughed, a hollow sound. "Fix this? You were never mine to begin with. I was just the stand-in, the safe choice." Her tears fell harder. "No, that's not true. I love you." "Love?" I leaned closer, my voice low. "You wrote to him that you never stopped loving him. You gave him everything I thought was mine. Love isn't a word you get to use anymore." She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Pack your things," I said, my voice steady. "You'll leave tomorrow. The house is mine. The accounts are mine. You walk away with nothing." Her face crumpled. "Please, Mark, don't do this. Don't throw away 20 years. I stood, my chair groaning against the floor. "You threw it away?" "You set fire to it. I'm just letting it burn." And then I left her there, sobbing into her hands, the candlelight flickering against her broken face. Weeks passed. Claire filed for divorce. Alex moved into a cheap apartment, his reputation in ruins. Rachel left with a suitcase and nowhere to go. And me? For the first time in years, I felt free. The silence of my home was no longer suffocating. It was peace. The air felt cleaner without her lies clinging to it. Sometimes I sat on the porch at dusk, sipping whiskey, watching the sun bleed across the horizon. Neighbors waved, unaware of the war that had raged behind closed doors. Claire called once. Her voice was soft, hesitant. "I just wanted to thank you," she said, "for telling me the truth." We spoke for an hour that night. About betrayal, about pain, about starting over at 50. Her laughter, tentative and fragile, reminded me that healing was possible. Maybe there would be something between us someday. Maybe not. But for now, it was enough to know we weren't alone in our scars. Rachel and Alex had chosen shadows. They thought love could survive in secrecy. But secrets always rot. And when the light comes, everything crumbles. They were left with nothing. And I, finally, had everything I needed. Months later, I found myself standing in the attic, sorting through boxes we had stored and forgotten. Among them was one labeled Memories. Inside, I discovered our old wedding album. I flipped through the pages slowly, the photographs yellowed at the edges. Rachel's smile stared back at me, radiant, untouched by time, untouched by betrayal. For a moment, I almost believed she was still the woman I once knew. But then I remembered the journal, the emails, the laughter meant for another man. The weight of truth settled again, and I closed the album. I carried it outside to the fire pit. The flames licked at the photographs, curling them into ash. Her smile dissolved into smoke, rising into the night sky. And as I watched the embers fade, I felt no hatred, no longing, only release. For the first time, the past no longer owned me. And the future, scarred though it might be, was mine to claim. And as the fire burned away what was left of us, I realized something. Betrayal may steal years, but it doesn't have to steal the rest of your life. If my story struck a chord with you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts below. Sometimes, telling our stories is how we begin to heal,